Great Lakes. 5,400 cubic miles of life-sustaining fresh water. 3,500 species of plants and animals. And over 34 million regional inhabitants, all working together to write the story of the world's largest freshwater ecosystem. It's a story that a single soul cannot write alone. We are all connected, the life that is this place. And it's only through mutual respect and an appreciation of that life that those connections will continue to endure page after page through this life and into the next. Hello and welcome, my freshwater friends, to episode 29 of the About the Water podcast, an exploration of high strangeness on and around the Great Lakes. Today we're Lake Huron bound as we wander the hallowed grounds of the Barques lighthouse near the very tip of Michigan's thumb. Here, we learn two valuable lessons about ghosts. First, that if they indeed exist, they are deserving of our respect. And second, sometimes they come along with ghosts of their own, working together and protecting one another as their intertwined stories continue to play out about the water. Episode 29, Silent Barques. November was a living ghost, every bit as much of a fixture on the Great Lakes as the legendary gales of the month, which was her namesake. Her windswept haunting ground was her favorite place on planet Earth, eastern Michigan's Barques lighthouse, the only place in this glitzy and glamorous and fast-paced world that made sense to her. She would walk barefoot, grounding herself as she recharged her cosmic energy along the limestone ledges. She wore no headphones and carried no devices, listening to the whispers of wind in the leaves. As far as high schoolers go, November was unique. While others were dressing to impress and nurturing facades to win popularity contests, November would walk alone, leaning into the autumn wind as the cool Lake Huron air filled her rich life with dark shades of gray and blue. Although she chose to keep to herself, she was rarely alone. People watching was her true joy. But not the living. The living were careless and clumsy, loud and obnoxious. They did annoying things and always spoke shallow nonsense. Ghosts were much better company. Their movements were graceful. Their actions were small, deliberate, and precise. They could communicate without filling the fresh air with acidic words and inflections. Night was approaching, and November sat on a bench overlooking Lake Huron. She could feel the hair on the back of her neck beginning to stand up as a chilly ripple made its way through her body. November smiled. "Good evening, Sherman," she said. "Beautiful night." November didn't know who Sherman actually was. She had met him months ago after sensing an unfamiliar presence near the lighthouse, a presence which would draw nearer each time she tried to make conversation with him. One day, a voice whispered right in her ear, "Sherman," even though there was no one around. And when she repeated the name back, from what she could sense, the presence liked it and seemed excited by it, so Sherman it must be. The lighthouse museum staff and maintenance volunteers did know of, and would indeed tell tales of, Peter Shook, the first lighthouse keeper in Michigan and the first lighthouse keeper at Barques. And of course they proudly share the story of Catherine, Peter's wife. She was made the first female lighthouse keeper in Michigan. The spirits of Peter and Catherine are nothing short of legendary at the lighthouse. Local tales would also tell of a friendly but sassy spirit named Lighthouse Lucy, and some locals would even make mention of George Paris, the alleged ghost of a later keeper in the 1990s. But when it came to the spirit, possibly named Sherman, who seemed to delight in rustling leaves, making water splash inexplicably, and more than once knocking over November's coffee or tea, nobody seemed to have any idea to whom November might be referring. As November sat, contemplating who Sherman might be, she realized that the sun had nearly set, doing its usual showing off by splashing the eastern waterfront with a million shades of gold. The sparse, off-season staff had locked up and gone home not minutes ago, and with the late October air being so pleasant, November decided to remain there on the steel bench and enjoy the serenity of the nightfall's darkness washing over her. After a few minutes of meditation, November felt a presence behind her once again. And once again, she greeted it with a smile. A smile which faded when she felt the pressure on her right shoulder, the warmth of a very real human hand. November? November scrambled off the bench so clumsily that she fell in the grass. Looking up, she saw 3 figures standing over her. "Oh, man, I'm so sorry, a male voice said, extending a hand to help her up. As the young man assisted November to her feet, he continued, "I'm so sorry. I said your name like several times, but it seemed like, you were in like a trance or something." November brushed the freshly cut grass off her coat. "Yeah, I was meditating, yeah," she replied. The young man identified himself as Sam, and then proceeded to introduce the other 2. This is my producer, Ethan. He goes by Ecto. This is my kid's sister, Ellie. And one of the lighthouse volunteers, they pointed you out before they left and said that you were kind of the expert on ghosts around here, right? We're doing some paranormal investigation for our YouTube channel." November took a moment to observe the group. Sam and Ecto couldn't have been any older than upper high school. They were dressed very deliberately from head to toe in a sort of retro goth motif, like they had just walked out of a Hot Topic. And as for Ellie, she was maybe 13. November noticed that she had her eyes nervously fixed on the lighthouse, and Sam had seen that November had noticed. "Yeah, she's afraid of ghosts, aren't you, Ellie?" he said. The young girl shook her head no, as she mumbled, "Ghosts aren't real," her eyes never once leaving the window that she was staring at. "Yeah, so anyway, November, you went in on this? It's going to be badass," Sam offered. November shook her head no, doing her best to communicate without words that she found Sam and his operation nothing shy of hilarious. "Alrighty," said Sam, as he picked up a backpack full of gear. "Well, I guess we'll leave you 2 scaredy girls to it then." As November scoffed, Ecto began to film Sam with a DSLR, and Sam spoke as he walked away. "Hey everyone, we're here at Point Barques Lighthouse way up north. Check this out. It's said that there's this chick who haunts this place, right? She jumped from the top to her demise, and supposedly you can hear footsteps and feel cold patches. We're going to check out the outside and then head on inside. So around me, you're going to see the big structure of the lighthouse over here." November sighed. "Do you think ghosts are real?" Ellie asked. November, deciding on telling the young girl the truth, or at least what she thought was the truth, nodded her head yes. Yeah, I've seen them," she said, "in many places, many different times." Ellie looked at her in fright. It's okay," November added. They're just people, you know? They do their thing while we do ours. You just gotta be nice to them, you know? Treat them with respect, like you would anyone else." After a few minutes, the guys had walked back into earshot. Sam was bragging about having received exclusive access to the lighthouse as he began to unlock a side door, stopping mid-sentence to complain about some nearby dog that kept barking and ruining the shot. November laughed at the absurdity of these paranormal prima donnas. "Get over yourselves," she whispered. If there was a barking dog somewhere, she couldn't even hear it. "So the lighthouse keeper, her name was Lucy," Sam told the camera. Her husband left her for another woman, and she had like a dozen kids and had all this stuff to do, right? So one day she climbs to the top of the lighthouse and jumps off. Now she waits in the afterlife for her husband to return so she can get her revenge. November had had it. She bolted up from the bench and stepped between the camera and Sam, demanding that Ecto stop filming. "What the hell is wrong with you guys? That is not what happened," she explained. "Peter was a good man. He drowned in a storm, and his wife courageously took over his duties." Before November could fully berate Sam and Ecto for their lack of respect, the entire group was taken off guard when the door that Sam had opened suddenly slammed shut, so hard that it knocked Sam onto his back. Sam was dazed. "No, record, he instructed Ecto as he stood up and tried to open the door again, but it wouldn't budge. Sam banged on the door. "Why don't you come out here and talk to us, Lucy?" "Lucy!" A loud buzzing noise suddenly rang out from a device that Sam fished out of his gear bag. He explained to the camera that it was his EMF meter, or electromagnetic field meter, and that fluctuations in the electromagnetic field were common when ghosts were nearby. Sam cheesily grinned at the camera, addressing his to-be audience. "Fine, Lucy, have it your way. Let the hunt begin." As Sam banged on the lighthouse door, November again began to voice her disapproval, and Sam replied by repeatedly suggesting that she leave, in less than polite terms. As the two started to yell at each other, Ecto broke up the shouting match. With an expression of terror, he stared towards the ground to the left of November. "Is that yours?" he asked, while backing away cautiously. November intersected his gaze and looked down, seeing absolutely nothing. "Hey, I don't do dogs, Ecto began to repeat. Sam told Ecto to relax, and through the completely silent evening air, demanded of November, "Could you at least get that thing to shut up so we can film this?" November looked around in confusion, seeing nothing, hearing nothing. Ellie's quiet voice then whispered as she continued to keep her eyes on the window. "Sam, it's time to leave." Sam and Ecto slowly began to gather their gear in their bags while making calming gestures and noises, trying to ease the empty ground near November. "All right, good boy. We're leaving. It's okay. Relax. It's okay, pup. We're leaving. Sam fired an angry glance at November and unleashed a series of unkind comments about her interruptions and her dog. November, who was dogless and obviously lost in a fog of confusion, turned towards Ellie. "Ellie, do you see a dog? Do you hear a dog?" November asked. Ellie broke her gaze from the lighthouse window, looking at the vacant ground and then back up at November, and with a nervous tear forming in her eye and an expression that suggested that November was totally insane, she asked, "Do you not?" A pleasant and empowering chill ran through November. She looked up at the lighthouse window before returning her triumphantly mischievous gaze back towards Sam and Ecto. "Sherman?" November said. "Get him." With that, the guys dropped their gear and ran at full speed towards the car, Ecto going as far as to chuck his camera at the empty space which was apparently chasing him down. Ellie laughed nervously as she asked November if it's okay if she gathered their bags and gear. "Yeah, of course, you're fine," November said. Sam was shouting for Ellie to just run, but instead, Ellie took her time, smiling at November and giving her an accepting nod. "Well, I gotta say you made her laugh," Ellie said, as she motioned towards the lighthouse window. November glanced at the empty window and then back at Ellie, asking, "Did you see her? In the second window, they say that's where she is. I've never seen her there, but did you see her?" Ellie, who began her walk back towards the car, stopped instantly, looking back over her shoulder at November, asking, "Did you not?" wrapping up this story, it's important that we entirely set the record straight on Peter and Catherine, seeing as how Sam's research was, at best, horrendously flawed. Peter was a good, hard-working man who was faithful to Catherine, and once when she was ill, he arranged for a doctor to visit the light station. It was storming out, and the doctor needed to get back to his other patients. Heroically, Peter tried to take him via boat, which was much safer at the time than traversing the 1800s wilderness in that area, even in a storm, and sadly passed while doing so. Catherine served as lightkeeper and passed about a decade after Peter, and any notion of her taking her own life is simply false, sensationalist, garbage, frankly. So now, let's focus on the paranormal star of our show. Who in the world is Sherman? I think it's safe for us to assume that Sherman is the ghost of a domesticated dog. During a conversation while November walked Ellie back to the car, Ellie explained that she clearly saw a dog several times. She had assumed it was November's because it seemed centered around her and responded to her command to get him. By Ellie's accounts, it looked like a chocolate lab, but with a significantly larger frame. And although November is absolutely certain that she never once saw or heard a dog, Sam and Ecto can serve as eyewitnesses that there indeed was one. I mean, why else would you wet your pants and flee for your life from a dog if there wasn't one? November and I both scoured the internet in search of any footage we could find from Ecto, but nothing of him, Sam, or the ordeal at all was found. In trying to find an answer as to what happened, I called several area museums, the local Port Austin library, and even a few paranormal contacts I have out that way. The info I received back was unanimous. Sure, slamming doors definitely makes sense. A woman in a window is a common sight at Barques, and in fact can be seen in photos that are published online. Although the reports strangely tend to put her in the lightkeeper's quarters, not the tower itself, which is where Ellie had seen her. But the same experts that I asked fed me the same question right back. Who is Sherman? Given only the assumption that November is accurate on the name, I did do some research. And nobody, no administrators, no lightkeepers, no dogs, nobody named Sherman seems to be associated with the area. And as for the Barques lighthouse, ironically, there is no report of a ghost dog on site. Except for one. On November 7th, 1983, two freighters struck each other while navigating through fog. The Albany and the Philadelphia. Eventually, both took on too much water and wound up sinking to the bottom of Lake Huron. The Albany first, and then the Philadelphia. The Albany's captain, upon boarding the Philadelphia, was said to have rescued his dog, who was then sadly lost when the Philadelphia sank. Locals tell a timeless story about a dog's bark being heard echoing over the open waters, and even sometimes along the shoreline nearest to where the ships sank, 12 miles off the coast of the Barques lighthouse. November has still not physically seen Sherman, but interacts with him in some way nearly every time she's at the lighthouse. All of the elements of this encounter leave us with a paranormal inquiry. Do ghosts get to choose who they present themselves to? And if so, can they choose how and when? We don't know why Sam and Ecto and Ellie saw a dog when November did not. We don't know why November is apparently the only Barques lighthouse regular who interacts with Sherman. But what we do know is that the spirits that came before us can become intertwined with our own. Man, woman, and in some instances, animal. It seems that those who seek them will find them in their own ways. Those who are rude and discourteous will be met with slamming doors. Those who are curious will be met with apparitions. And those who are kind, respectful, and open-hearted may just find themselves befriending a faithful new companion, whether they see them or not. And with that, thank you sincerely for listening. Here's hoping that in your adventures around these strange waters, you're met with the dignity and respect that a good soul deserves, and that the centuries-old stories they tell of you later are as grand, beautiful, and enduring as our Great Lakes. I'll see you about the water.